Bueno, clase, hoy vamos a empezar a hablar de la gramática de esta lección, que es la primera lección del capítulo 7. Y como pueden ver desde tu paquete de apuntes Cornell, hay unos objetivos de la lección aquí en inglés. I can correctly use the preterite and imperfect of stative verbs. Stative verbs are verbs that don't necessarily depict action. They're verbs that explain states of being or talk about states of being. I can use grammatical reflexives correctly, and if you'll remember, grammatical reflexives are verbs that are reflexive for no apparent reason. We have typically the first reflexives that we learned were verbs that the subject was doing the action to itself. The subject and the object reflected one another. And then the second time we began to use reflexive verbs, it was to indicate reciprocal actions. We love each other, we hug each other, we kiss each other, we look at each other, we fight each other. Those are all reciprocal actions, things that take place between a plural with plural subjects. But in this case, in this lesson, we're going to just be talking about verbs that just are reflexive. And there's no other reason for it than they just are. And then the last grammar target here is using low and low-K correctly. We have already been using them. But we touch on it and we mention it and we play with it a little bit. Some of you tried to use them in your paper that you just, the persuasive essay that you just got back. Some of you did so successfully, some of you did not. But we are going to take a look at that information and hopefully be able to master the use of those two things. Okay, so here we are on page 284 of the text. If you're not already there, you want to have your textbook open. And here we'll see the longest of the three boxes that we need to look at. And this is talking about the preterite and the imperfect of stative verbs. Stative verbs express situations or states of being rather than actions. And so that's that first entry in your Cornell Notes, describing what stative verbs are used for. And then it says, when using stative verbs, the imperfect is used to describe past situations or states. Now that makes sense to us because that's what we use the imperfect tense for, right? Well, then it goes on to say that we're going to use the preterite to do, and then we have 2 points in our notes. Well, one is to indicate that there has been a change into or out of a state. We know that it happened. It was going along just great in one way, and then bam, there was a change. Remember, we used this concept when we were talking about accidents and injuries. All of a sudden something happened, and this is how we felt as a result of something that happened. That's that change in state. And we've used it before, but now we're going to be responsible for it in a slightly different way. And then the second application of it is to express the duration of past action or states. If we know the beginning and end, or we know the beginning or the end of the action, we're going to use the preterite for those tasks. So that's what we have for 1 and 2. They're in your Cornell Notes. For the preterite is used to indicate a change into or out of a state. Number 2, it's used to indicate the duration of a state or a situation. And then we have a table here where we have common stative verbs, estar and ser. That makes sense. Those are the 2 verbs to be. Then tener and tener que. How they conjugate in the imperfect tense or the preterite tense might be helpful for you to write those in the table. But then also in the table in the textbook, it tells you or gives you the differentiation between the 2. Whether it's in the imperfect, what's going on with that verb, and then what's going on with that verb if it happens in the preterite. Then I gave you some translation sentences to to apply some of those concepts. So I'm going to be quiet for a couple minutes while you do that. Those of you who are listening to this through the webcast, you might want to pause the video now while you take the time to fill that in. Students in the classroom are a little bit ahead of me, and so they've already got all of that done. So those of you who are listening to the webcast, go ahead and pause your video while you fill in the table and the translations, and then listen to us as we give you what went on with those translation sentences. Okay, so those of you who are in the classroom with me, number one, quería comprar el vestido que vi en la tienda de ropa, pero cuando regresé no estaba. En inglés, clase, I wanted to buy the dress that I saw in the clothing store, right? But
when I got back,
or when I returned, this regresé comes from the same Latin root as our English verb regresé, from the infinitive regresar. What English verb could be related to that?
return.
No, actually, to regress. If you progress, you move forward. If you regress, you move backward. Isn't that interesting? Egress is to get out, right? You have egress windows maybe in basement bedrooms of your house? No? Oh, you aren't studying architecture then. An egress window is a window in a basement bedroom that allows you to get out if there's an emergency. Okay? So you have progress moving forward, regress moving backward. So regresé comes from regresar, which is to go back. But when I went back, it wasn't there. Número dos, el esfuerzo necesario de lograr mis sueños fue muy grande. En inglés, clase.
The effort necessary.
Oh, is Miles here all by himself? The effort necessary to achieve my what? Dreams was very great. Now we could say it was very big, but that doesn't sound as eloquent as saying it was very great. So in this case, it was very great is a better translation. Número tres, mi papá siempre tenía un carro viejo, pero la semana pasada tuvo un nuevo. Okay, so my dad always had an old car, but last week
he got a new one.
He got a new one. That's what happens with tener. You see that when tener is in the preterite, all of a sudden it means they get, as in they got, or they obtained, they received. All right, now if you'll turn over to that second page of your notes, at the top is another table. You say, where's that table, old hag? Well, it's really the information that's in the thought bubble that's to the left of that first grammar box. It's talking about something that you should remember from a previous lesson, or perhaps it's even from a previous year. It could have been in Spanish 3. I'm old. I don't remember. So anyway, these are 4 verbs that change their meaning slightly from the imperfect to the preterite. And this is, again, information that's contained in that thought bubble to the left of the grammar box on page 284. Conocía, I used to know. Conocí, I met. Sabía, I used to know. Supe, I found out. Quería, I wanted. Quiso, I tried to. Quise, I tried to. No quise, I refused to. Podía, I was able to. Pude means I could. And what's the difference between I was able to and I could? Well, for example, you might say, well, I was able to clean up my room, but that didn't mean that you actually did it. That means you have the ability to do so. But when you put it in the preterite and you say, pude limpiar mi habitación, then it becomes I could and I did actually accomplish that task. All right. Then if you'll flip over to page 286, we have that next grammar box, and this is about those grammatical reflexes. reflexives. And it opens up with that description I gave you earlier about what's the general use of a reflexive verb or a verb with a reflexive pronoun. One is to indicate that the subject is doing the action to itself. A second one is to indicate that two subjects are interacting. But these verbs really are just reflexive with no discernible reflexive action. Now, you'll notice that there's a typographical error here right above that table at the bottom, where one of the reasons that verbs are grammatically reflexive is merely to show a difference between a slight change in meaning. Let's put it that way, to demonstrate a slight change in meaning. So the examples I gave here are irse means to go away or to leave, where ir means just to go. Dormirse means to fall asleep. What's the infinitive that should be in parentheses there? Dormir, D-O-R-M-I-R, dormir, which means to sleep. All right, now, do you know why my computer changed my spelling there from dormir to dormer? Do you know why my computer? I didn't do that. I would never make that mistake. Why did my computer change my spelling from dormir to dormer? Well, here you go. We're going to learn some English here, okay? A dormer is a window, a structural window that comes out through the roof of a house. It's like an inset window, and it's usually in a bedroom on the second floor. And it's called a dormer window because it's in your bedroom, your dormitorio, okay? So my computer didn't like the dormir. It wanted it to be a dormer, okay, because it thought I was typing in English. So those of you who never wanted to study architecture, there's a little more information for you about architecture. A window that pops out through the roof of a house is usually called a dormer window because it's in a bedroom. All right, so then you have a table here with a list of verbs. Now, we're not going to have time today to go over all of them, and that's okay because our friends who are out taking the AP Psych test are going to be happy that we didn't finish it. But you have two more grammar boxes. If you feel so moved, you want to get a jump on it, go ahead and finish those up. The table there about grammatical reflexives, and then the notes, los apuntes sobre lo y lo que. And then being the awesome, motivated students that you are, the next thing that you should do is probably what? What was that, Emmeline? The packet. You probably ought to look for some related activities in the packet. Now, you're so bright, which one should you choose to do? What exercises in the packet should you choose to do?
The ones that you struggle with the most.
The ones that you struggle with the most. See, I told you you were brilliant. Look up the ones that are attached to a grammar point that maybe you're saying, I'm not so sure about that. I haven't assigned them yet. I'm going to assign some of them down the road, but I want you to wrestle with it first. Research says that you're more likely to learn well something that you wrestle with, believe it or not. Okay? Questions for me. Okay, I need to move 5 seats over to the room across the hall. So I'm going to start doing that. If somebody would like to help me, that would be amazing.
Right now.
Okay, I think school's over. Go. We're still taking the AP Psych test, so that's why the bell isn't working. Woo! Oh, I gotta stop this.